Hello, Kyra.
Hello, Uri. So good to have you here. Welcome to Heroes of Improv. For the people that don't know me, I am Kyra Thaysen, an improviser, a teacher, and an associate producer at DULUTH, the improvised soap opera, which is in full production at the moment, and we are coming up. It's only 3 weeks away. We are going to air very, very soon.
Best of luck.
It's so exciting. If you haven't already pressed the subscribe button for YouTube, then do, because otherwise you'll miss the premiere. Every Sunday evening, prime time. And yeah, with me today, Uri Lifshitz. Lifchitz? I always say Lifshitz.
No, you pronounce it perfectly. It's amazing. It's the first time ever that anyone ever did that.
Yes. So you are one of my newly discovered heroes in the improv world, for being amongst one of the few that not only dares to approach but also teaches sexuality, kink, intimacy, and even BDSM in improv, amongst other topics, of course. But this is how I got to know you, and I was thrilled. So I'm so happy to have you here, Uri. Welcome.
Thank you.
We met recently at the Hello Janos Improv Festival in Italy, where...
Well, everything being remote now.
Yes, exactly, unfortunately. But I think it's fantastic that it's still happening, all these festivals, right?
Yes.
This improv festival was all about the topic, let's talk about sex, where we both held workshop. So the first question I have with you is, what is your point, Uri, your point of view and your experience of why there is so little out there on such important themes such as intimacy and sex when it comes to improv? Could it be that many improvisers are uncomfortable with exploring intimacy on stage because they feel it's too private? Or do you think there's just not enough taught on how to approach it?
Well, that's an excellent question, Kyra. I think mainly the first thing what we need to remember is that intimacy is frightening. When we leave ourselves out there and vulnerable, and it's a feeling that's very hard to maintain, and it's very easy to get hurt, and we've all been hurt before. And so putting our trust in other people is scary. Having said that, though, improv is all about trusting other people. And we need to have that sense of security, that sense of safety and trust that whatever we do on stage, someone else will come along and pick up where we left off and give us that next scene and work with us to create something.
I agree.
But the moment we do that, we work on a certain kind of intimacy and trust. And like in many other places, when we work on one thing, we tend to neglect another. And a lot of improv troupes, which I've worked with, talk about, okay, yeah, we work together a lot, we know each other intimately, and that's like a byproduct of improv. You improvise with people and they have to invent something on the spot in a moment's notice, then they're gonna draw on the first thing that comes to their head. And you get to know people really intimately if you perform with them for a long time. But then you kind of feel like you're really close and you're really intimate, so you don't bother with actually having the conversation. You don't actually ask, okay, listen, when we're on stage, is it okay if I touch you on the shoulder? Is it okay if I slap your butt on stage, like jokingly? You never actually talk about it until the moment comes when it feels appropriate on stage, because you're playing a couple that's been married 14 years and you're very intimate and you're like, hey dear, how was the kids today or whatever. And all of a sudden you discover that maybe the other person
wasn't okay
with that. And you discover that at the worst possible moment. You discover it on stage when the other person is, what just happened? And we don't know how to react to that, because you know, we know how to react when someone blocks us. We know how to react when we forget a character's name, or when we don't come up on stage when we are called, etc. But we don't learn how to deal with this type of situations.
Which is going to come to my next question, because you're already answering, which I'm loving. My next questions I have for you, because I want people to really, I want them to have the opportunity with this interview to understand exactly also what you do. So I want to just take a moment and dive a little bit deeper so you can explain it even better, because I think it's so important. Your recent workshop where I met you at the Hello Jonas Festival had a great title. It was very bold. When I saw it, I was like, I'm taking it. It was called BDSM, Best Practices to Bring with You to the Improv Stage.
Yes.
Now, I love the title because it's one of those titles that I think most people probably just, whether improviser or not, they're probably like, what? How on earth would you mix the two? But I think I have to say it's a beautiful title because it gets attention. It might scare some people off that don't dare to delve deeper and be like, I'm interested, I want to find out what this is about. Before though, I ask you the official question, I want to ask or tell people, for people that don't know, quickly just explain to them what BDSM stands for, because we always have people that don't know and they mix it up. So BD, bondage and discipline, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the practice of using pain as a sexual stimulant. Then we have sadism or sadism, depending on where you're coming from, which is getting psychological pleasure from inflicting pain on someone who enjoys it. I have to always say this. Mm-hmm. In the BDSM world, that there's a difference, right? Maybe you're a sadist and you don't want people that don't, but that's got nothing to do with BDSM. Mm-hmm. And then I think masochism as well, it's getting sexual gratification from being subjected to physical pain or humiliation by oneself or another person. Would you agree? Those are the terms?
Close enough.
Yes, we can make it even easier. I always say, to make people grasp, understand sadism more, because that's always one of the things. I always say it's the same as if you were taking great pleasure and eating really slowly in front of your dog, wanting him to think that you're going to share it, but then you don't in the last minute.
Oh, that's just terrible. Let's not do that ever.
No, that's horrible. That's sadism for me, guys. And masochism is voting for a right-wing party.
Just to clarify for all you audience out there, we don't actually perform any sexual acts inside the workshop. But what is fascinating in the BDSM community worldwide is that it's a community that revolve around sexual activities. And because it's a very wide community, and like you've mentioned, there's people who enjoy very different things. So one of the first things that evolve inside this community is an actual honest discourse about what it is you enjoy, what it is you don't enjoy, and how to signal your partner when they're over the line. Because much like we said a moment ago, you don't want to discover you crossed the line with your colleague on stage, and you definitely don't want to discover that you and your partners are not on the same page when you're handcuffed to a bed in a motel in Berlin. So, yes. Not a true story. Never mind. That's why we want to talk about these things, and we want to talk about them beforehand. We want to make sure that each side has established their limits, their boundaries, and we want to make sure that we have ways of signaling the other person if they're approaching them or if they go over them. And that's something that can now be translated to improv very well. If I have a phrase, a safe word, if you will, where I can say on stage to my partner, listen, dude, it's fine, let's keep doing this scene, but tread lightly because I feel uncomfortable. It's amazing. And also I have a different safe word for saying, okay, this scene making me uncomfortable, and usually by extension also make people in the audience uncomfortable. So I'm gonna cut it here, but I'm not just gonna edit to another scene. That's not good enough. Because because we need the trust. I need to trust you that you won't bring this scene again in a few scenes or this specific situation. So we have different safe words to actually tell our partner, listen, let's cut this and move on. And that's just one of the things we learned during the workshop, how to use safe words effectively within the framework of an improv show.
Mm. And I think, Uri, this is exactly what I was so thoroughly enjoying in your workshop, how you introduced these basic rules, which we really can learn from. I always say in the normal vanilla world, if you would call it that, that it's about safety first, right? That's what we can learn from. We're not good at it in the normal world. We don't, like you say, it's not respectful. It's not asking for consent at any point. We cross boundaries all the time. And we do that mainly, even as improvisers, because we don't even know our own boundaries. We don't explore them enough. How far can I go? Not just as a character, as a choice, but with my volume, with my proximity, my closeness to a character. Can I, like you say, hit somebody on the shoulder, on the bum, or in the face, right? It's a lot of combat work that we're doing, stage combat. Very important to have safety rules that are included and that you talk about beforehand. And I think you are an expert on this. And I want to now, if I'm allowed to, give everybody a quick example of how you, we're not going to do a scene, but a quick example of the most important communication rules that you use that are transmitted, which I love, and I'm already incorporating in all of my stage work with people that I work very closely with. And that's the green, yellow, red, or green, orange, red, right? Which is the, instead of editing the scene, to tell your partner green, which is,
let's continue. This is excellent. Moving on. We have yellow, which I usually use, oh mama, which is, okay, let's ease back here. And for some cases, I even use the simple, well, I teach the simple, and they were never seen again. That's something that for extreme cases, if I'm on stage and I'm with someone and we're in a scene where I feel uncomfortable, I simply go toward the audience and I said, and these two persons were never seen again. And that's how I edit the scene to make sure that everyone knows that we are not doing this anymore.
Right. I like your version as well that you taught with the red, which is so important. The whoa, you know, you had the chill. I think chill was like,
chill,
okay,
chill.
Too far, right? And when you're too loud or something, you're too close, you're like, chill. But you can bring that in naturally in a scene without editing it. Your partner then knows, oh, I'm too close, or I'm too loud, or I've got to back off a bit. Even with content, maybe, you know, it can mean so many things. And then you've got the chill, and then you got the like, oh, mama, if it's just way too much, like, stop
yeah,
this,
way too much.
Stop this. This is my red. And that way you can carry on the scene, and naturally you can retrieve as a partner and say, I get it. Let's go back down a bit. Let's back off each other. And that can be in conflict. That can be in a caring manner. It can be sexually. It can be in combat. And so many things. Safety first. Finding out your boundaries. And yes, you're an expert, and I loved it. I loved your workshop, and it really did inspire me. And I think everybody should take it because it was amazing what the people learned there. Wow. Okay. Is it important, do you think, or advisable to play intimacy and vulnerability through narrative or dramatic improv versus comedy improv? If so, why?
Oh, well, it's an interesting question. I remember, let me answer you in a roundabout way. When I started out doing improv, I did a lot of comedy work because that's my safe zone. That's where I feel the most at ease, how I connect best with the audience. And I did a show, and a good friend of mine, J-Star Atlanta, which I'm sure everyone knows, came to me after the show, and he said something amazing. He said, listen, you don't need to push for a dramatic scene, and you don't need to push for a comic shift. If you hang on to a moment and follow it through, eventually the moment breaks. So I think you can't really have one without the other if you're actually creating a realistic character or a realistic narrative. I mean, you can have all fun and games if you're doing something like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where you don't really have coherent storyline, you don't really have coherent characters, because it's all short form. But once you actually commit to a realistic character or storyline, you will have drama and you will have comedy. Whether you know how to express it and get the audience to understand how dramatic or comic that moment is, that's up to your skill as an improviser. But they will be there.
Right, right. Okay, especially with intimacy though, do you think, because it's so fragile, would you say people that practice intimacy with improv should be in a close group? Would you suggest that, or should at least know each other very well before just charging into one of those scenes?
No, not necessarily. I think you can do, I mean, you know, we're improvisers, but we're also actors. But I think in order for that to work, you need to have some sort of base trust. And if you talk before your scene, before the show, and saying, okay, we may go into a dramatic scene. Are you comfortable with A, B, and C? And the other person says yes, then it might be very easy to create that sense of intimacy, or at least to act it out.
Yes, yes, I agree. And I think also what people, they're always scared of the word intimacy. I don't think intimacy is naturally, it's not always sexy. It's not about sex. It's not about touching each other or kissing. Or intimacy can, it's just vulnerability for me.
I would even take it a step further. I would say that sexuality oftentimes negate intimacy on stage, because these are two different emotions and one can exist very easily without the other. So if you have a very sexual scene, it won't always depict intimacy. You can have a lot of, you can think of movies and TV show, etc. You can have a lot of scenes where there's a one-night stand or a very passionate lovemaking, but you don't see any intimacy. Intimacy is the before and after. Intimacy is the decision, the trust, the vulnerability.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That was beautifully said, and I agree with that completely. Okay, Uri, I want to talk to you about your personal experience on dramatic improv. You already said a little bit about how you practice it to me. Even more so, you know, when you're in Europe, because you're in America as well. I mean, you come from Tel Aviv. Let's just...
Close enough.
Okay, close enough, just outside. So people know. But, you know, when you play in Europe, do you get more of it? Or when you're in America, do you just look for it because you practice it?
It's an excellent question. I think about most of the festivals I've been in were in Europe. And I think people in Europe has a tendency to create a more narrative-based experience than the US. Most of the improv which I've seen in the US tend to be more short-form oriented. I don't know if it's a general rule or just my experience from that. But I did get the sense that in Europe, people tell different stories, being a lot more personal, if I can say that. Not to say that comedy is not bigger and better, but I think it has a limit. You can make people laugh with comedy, but in order to get them to feel anything else, you're gonna need more than that. You're gonna need comedy and something. You're gonna have to take your comedy and laugh at something serious. You're gonna need to take your comedy and incorporate it into other situations, not those that are inherently funny. If you would think about all the great stand-up comedians, for example, they make jokes, but the jokes are not about funny things. It's about the daily experience, the moments in which we have to, how to put this?
Awkward, the awkward ones. It's the when you feel like, oh, did he, oh, did they, oh, you could relate, yeah.
Yeah, where you have these two emotions and the comedy give you an outlet to say, okay, whew, good thing I can laugh about this, because I don't know how to behave without that comic outlet.
Yes, exactly. I think we often, it's just a tension release. I think laughing is, there's two kinds of laughter I've noticed in my life. It's most of the normal laughing is when we're in awkward situations and we don't know how to deal with it. So we naturally our muscles, they laugh. We're like, oh God, this is awkward. And you can laugh differently. And then there's, which is seldom, the laughing, which is so from your belly, you can't stop anymore. You laugh so much that you've got tears, which as we grow up, I find harder and harder to have those moments. Those are, children have them very often, right? When they just laugh and laugh, and it's truthful, and it doesn't, you think, why are they laughing? It's just, you don't even understand sometimes as an adult, but they are. And I think when we grow up, we learn, or we forget how to laugh. We don't use it enough, right? So I think they are different emotions, laughing. But it's more when we're older, I think it's more a release of pressure.
Definitely. It's part of the way we make sense of the world, and it's a crazy world, so.
Yeah. One more thing, Uri, what's in Israel at the moment, the improv scene, especially now in the pandemic? Is there a lot of improv going on? Is it, I mean, you've all been vaccinated. You're all allowed to officially start again, I think, no?
And it's happening. There's just this week, there was a big post on the Israeli Improv Facebook group with all the events lined up for the next month. And there's like every week an event, a big event, shows, and there's 2 small festivals in the upcoming month. One is just a community effort, 2 guys organizing a big festival down south, and things are really starting to
enter, right? Nobody's, unless you're vaccinated, nobody's allowed to go to Israel. They're really hard, really hard.
Yep. But, you know, it's working. And you can really see events starting to, well, nature come alive again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And is there a lot of comedy improv there, or is there also a lot of narrative and dramatic improv?
There's both, but, you know, we have a lot of younger groups, which often gravitate automatically toward comedy. But we have some of the more mature groups that really take you on a journey, as we say.
The last thing I have is I want to ask, have you ever, thinking about DULUTH now, which is in the background, why we're talking about narrative, because we need narrative or dramatic improv for our big soap. Have you ever played a character for 24 episodes? Have you ever done something similar? What's your experience with the longest you've ever taken a character anywhere?
Oh God, nothing remotely close to that. Taking a character and running with it for a whole 24 shows, that's insane to me. And I can't wait to see DULUTH and see what you're doing with it. But you have picked well. I mean, soap opera are like the genre to go if you're thinking about, okay, let's see what crazy things can happen.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Personally, I've had shows, you know, 2-3 hours long shows where you play the same character. But going more than that, I can't say I've tried. And that like bordering on acting and not improvising. I mean, what? I can't do what I want. I have to stay loyal to what I did like 2-3 shows ago. That's like work.
Well, it is work, but and it is a lot of acting. It's a complete different improv, right? It is. You have a lot of stress. You have to improvise everything. All the rules apply. So exciting to try and tell this in this format. We can't wait. It's mad.
One of my hobbies, aside from improv, is also role-playing games, tabletop role-playing game, Dungeons and Dragons and the like. And in those games, you would often play your character through session after session after session. And I've had characters which I played for 2-3 years in a row, weekly. So I kind of get the sense of what you're going with.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I love role-playing games is because it's so much like improv. You have a character and you need to come up with whatever they are doing at every given moment. And to, you know, you don't always have to invent a story. You just do whatever you do and the story kind of happens by itself magically.
Right.
But the challenge of staying true to that character you have created over time and keeping it consistent, gosh, that's an amazing experience.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what you mean. The consistency is, it's going to be so beautiful to figure out. On the one hand, that's what a soap's all about. Being the character, you're always going to be consistent so the audience recognizes you. You know, I'm a character who's extremely vulnerable, for example. I'm vulnerable and I just make the same mistakes over and over again. It doesn't matter what you bring. And the audience is sort of like, oh no,
Oh,
so please.
Kyra, why?
Why? You know, and running into that over and over. But that makes those characters wonderful because you're feeling with them and you're wanting them to take different choices. And maybe at some point, the day comes. And when that day comes, that character makes a different choice, they are going to be like, oh, finally. Like, oh, you know, so, and I think everybody has this, whether it's the villain, whether it's, you do stay true to your character, yet you also explore all the different emotions, all the different varieties. How does this person get angry or sad, or how are they surprised? With different situations, with different characters they meet, they're going to be different with everybody, right? We are all humans, and we have to show such a facet to our characters, and that's the beauty of this exploration work, which is scary.
Everything is a spectrum.
Everything is a spectrum. There you go. Everything is a spectrum, which I like. Yes.
God, it's so difficult doing that when you have a script next to you, and doing it without is. I mean, I'm talking about the long duration, the week in, week out. Poof.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck, Kyra.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you. Do you have any big tips as an improviser? If there were some tips that you would give the cast and crew of DULUTH for what you think they should try and practice in this time, or what you would wish them, what would it be? Go now.
Well, I think you're all probably amazing improvisers, and you know, you got this, it's in the bag. I would say work on working in front of a camera. That's a whole different shtick. For me, doing everything with a camera, I had to learn a lot of extra skills, like understanding that small facial gestures convey a lot when you're on camera. And when you're on stage, you have to, oh no! And when you're on a camera, it's like, what? And that's enough. You know, people understand. So make sure
to tone it down.
Tone it down, and it helps. It helps when you do things on camera because you know you don't have to take it to an extreme, and it makes everything easier.
Yes, it does. That's a great tip. For example, I'm a very reactive person. I'm very emotional. I'm very reactive and responsive to my surroundings and my world. So if somebody would walk into my flat without asking, I would look at them. I'd be like, "What? Who are you?" You know, you would see it in my face and my body and everything. But if I was on camera, I just have to, even that, I have to tone down. So it's actually very difficult to keep that.
I know for me, right. But for me, it was, you know, understanding this really helped me. On stage, you need to do a lot of work. And on camera, you can do things a lot more subtly. And for me, it was a really reassuring moment to understand that if I'm acting in a scene and there's cameras, I can, you know, take my time, do things slowly and subtly, and you don't need everything to be an outburst of emotions.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're right. And we will definitely take that to heart. That's wonderful. Uri, watch us, tune in with us. With our next shows that we are doing, Win will be doing more shows in the future where we will be producing things that you love. Sci-fi, I know that you love, you told me. We will contact you when the cast is up for something like that. Maybe you even want to direct it, have fun with it, try it out. We'd love to see you there. And I just want people to know where they can find you, because you do still offer online courses, right? Even though Israel is now opening up and you're doing a lot of physical again, but you're still in Europe and you still will be doing in America, wherever you...
I'm doing some, but mostly inside festivals and not outside of them. So look me up. I'll suddenly and magically appear on your newsfeed or in your favorite improv shows and festivals.
I will definitely pass on the website so people can find you, or your Facebook credentials so people know where to find you. Uri, you're wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Kyra.
And thank you so much for inspiring me, especially on the way you teach, not just improv, but especially boundaries and safety, and the way trust, it's incredible. I love it. Was this consensual, by the way? Was this consensual, our interview?
I think one of the main advantages of Zoom meetings is that you can always turn off your camera or get out of the meeting and everything is fine. Amazing.
That's the good thing, right? Safety first.
Safety first.
All right, Uri, thank you so much. And see you soon.
Thank you, Kyra.
Bye.
Farewell.